Hello y'all, so today this video is gonna be a little bit different from what I usually do. I usually make so the video was supposed to be a video about the PlayStation, them trying to get rid of or making it hard to sell used games. But in light of recent events, I have decided not only to talk about the leaks, the Insomniac leaks, but also just talk about all the Sony PlayStation L's we have had this year, which we have had a lot. Now, I want to make one thing very clear before we begin. I'm not doing this because Xbox is better than PlayStation or something like that. I'm not doing it to be a fanboy, okay? I'm not a fanboy, okay? I want to make that clear. But, at the same time, I am not above calling out people, especially people that have the most annoying fan base in existence. Like, the fanboys are the most annoying people in existence, and the console is overhyped as crap. I'm not saying it's a crap console. It's actually fairly good for what it is, you know. Now it's overpriced with the Slim, but we'll talk about that. But yeah, I just want to make it clear here that I'm not trying to fanboy. This isn't Xbox is better than PlayStation rant or anything. But I just want to talk about their L's and category and just kind of make it all concrete, I guess would be a better word. You know, categorize the L's. So when did these L's really start? I think that they started probably shortly before the Xbox acquisition was confirmed, the ABK deal. And I think that's when everything just started falling apart for Sony. Well, we got price increases, of course. PS Plus kind of price increase the same day Starfield was released. You know, then, of course, when the ABK deal finally went through, Jim Ryan left shortly after. And then, it really was after the ABK deal when their L's started, happening. And the ABK deal was one of the biggest ones. And it was hilarious. You know, the most ironic thing was Jim Ryan capping for Bungie. He was capping so hard for Bungie, okay? After the acquisition was successful, he said, well, Bungie is better than Call of Duty, and we only spent not even a third of what Microsoft spent on them. And this statement, I want you to remember this statement by Jim Ryan, because it's going to become ironic in a couple of minutes. So, after that happened, then Jim Ryan leaves. Now, I did talk about this a little bit, but I didn't really talk about it when it first came out. But I would say I don't think he left on his own accord. I think that he was forced to retire, if you know what I mean. After the ABK deal went through, Jim Ryan failed. He tried so desperately to get caught out of the hands of Xbox. They waited so long, then they cut the crappiest deal in existence just to scrape by with some form of Call of Duty content on their PlayStation. So yeah, that happened, and of course, he retired. He happens to retire. And his replacement, for a little bit, is a guy who thinks mobile gaming is the future. And I'm not talking the DS. I'm talking phones. So, there's that. And then, we have, of course, all of the layoffs this year. There was tons of layoffs. And just they're letting go people from Bungie. I don't know, maybe Insomniac, Naughty Dog, Sony themselves, I think. And, you know, we got people canceling their PSN Plus subscriptions, like a friend of mine who plays on PlayStation, or used to play on PlayStation PS Plus. I mean, he just got rid of it. Also, because he couldn't afford it. And then, with all that, Sony gets hacked. They get hacked. Now nothing major, no news really was released, but they just got hacked and people were like, I guess, banning accounts. I have no clue, but they got hacked like twice. And speaking of, randomly they started banning accounts for no reason. When there was no warning, PlayStation just went ban for some reason, all randomly. Yeah, all randomly, which was very weird. Oh, and of course, we cannot forget the blunder. That was the exclusive lineup. Now, I don't like measuring a console's worth on exclusives. I think there's more to a system than just exclusives, but I mean, this year was rough. Xbox released, like, okay. I don't care what you think about the games that was released, but all these games that were released by Sony, PlayStation, Microsoft, Xbox, and Nintendo Switch. However you feel about these games doesn't matter, but let's talk about them. Xbox release, these are major, nothing indie or minor. Redfall, Starfield, Forza, and Hi-Fi Rush. Nintendo, which was also, it was a big year for Xbox, but also another big year for Nintendo. You got Zelda Tears of the Kingdom, Mario Wonder, Pikmin 4, and a bunch of remakes and ports. Like Metroid Prime Remastered, which went all well, and a Super Mario RPG remake. Like, those were all well. What did PlayStation get? They got Forspoken, Final Fantasy 16, Spider-Man 2, and that's about it. Now, like I said, it doesn't matter whether you think these games are good or not, but that's less than the competition. And Forspoken wasn't received well. I mean, it was such a flop that Square Enix shut down that studio that worked on that game. And Final Fantasy 16 underperformed. It didn't perform as much as Sony wanted to, or as Square Enix wanted it to. So I don't know if that's a sign of quality or not, but to be fair, it was only on PlayStation. It wasn't even on PC like Forspoken was. It was also on PlayStation, or just on PlayStation, so that might, I don't know if that speaks to quality, though I did hear it was pretty mid, not the best game ever made. And then we have Spider-Man 2, the big exclusive, the big one, guys. Now, before I continue, you gotta remember, last year Sony was on top. Like, they had, God of War Ragnarok, one of the best received exclusives on the PS5 in a while. And they had a bunch of PC ports that went well. And, good news is coming. They had, Final Fantasy and Spider-Man 2 was coming out next year. Xbox had no games released that year. No major first-party exclusives were released that year. Like Starfield was supposed to, but it was pushed back into 2023. So they had no big exclusive titles. Nintendo was, they did have, Xenoblade Chronicles 3, but that was really it. And also PlayStation also had Stray for a little bit. So PlayStation was on top last year, no doubt about it, and there was hype for the future. Then the future happens and it all just comes crumbling down, and here we go into Spider-Man 2. And oh boy, Now there wasn't a major, like, it fell off. I think it sold fairly well. I mean, it's a Spider-Man game. Of course it's gonna sell well, but from what I heard, the reception was not good. Just like what Twitter was doing with Starfield, they were doing the same with Spider-Man, pointing out the flaws and all the bugs. And the journalists, for some reason, did not warn us about these bugs because it was littered. You can tell Sony was scared of Microsoft, so they had to push this game out as fast as they could. When they heard Starfield was coming out this year, they were like, Insomniac, when is it going to be done? And they were like probably early 2024. They're like, no time, just push it out. And that's what we got now. That's probably, I don't know if that's what happened. Who knows? Maybe it was, but yeah, it was not. Yeah, it was rough. That game was. And then from what I've heard, even without the bugs, that's like the least of Spider-Man's problems. At best, it's your usual Spider-Man. It's like the first game, your usual Spider-Man affair. And at worst, it's a preachy walking simulator that is buggy. And I feel like if Spider-Man can be described in one word, ESG scored. But I already basically, I didn't talk much about the rest of the story of Spider-Man 2 in my Miles Morales video. You can go check that out after you're done with this video. Pretty good video, I would say. But yeah, I don't like this game. If you couldn't tell. But yeah, I mean, it didn't necessarily fail, I don't think, but it was pretty goofy, I think. So yeah, there's that whole controversy. And then, oh boy, Factions gets canceled. Oh boy. And by the way, this stuff is happening back to back to back. So Spider-Man controversy, Factions gets canceled. Shortly after the Game Awards, when PlayStation 1 only one award, and that was for an adaptation, so it wasn't even for their games. And no, Final Fantasy 16 does not count. It's a Square Enix game, not a PlayStation game. So PlayStation only walked away with one award, and it wasn't even for video games. Oh boy, but that's not the only thing. So Factions gets canceled, the most anticipated PlayStation game, in my opinion. Then I can't remember if this happened before or after Factions. It was announced that Factions got canceled, but Sony started taking away, which I made a whole video about that. Sony started taking away movies that people have purchased. They started grabbing them and saying you can't watch them anymore. Now, like I said in that video, it wasn't necessarily a Sony L. I think it was mainly an L on Warner Brothers Discovery part, but still, that doesn't matter. It's still your place. You didn't give any compensation to these people. And so there's that, and then it feels like I'm and then, but it's true. And then we got the biggest L I think they've taken this year, and this year isn't over yet. Every time I think there's no way Sony can mess up again, something bad happens. So this video might become outdated, but I think they won't do anything else for the rest of the year. But the biggest L PlayStation has done, in my opinion, this year is... So, okay, let me tell you all a story. So back in the Xbox One days, when the PS4 was coming out, the Xbox One showcase focused a lot on the TV aspect of Xbox. They were like, Xbox TV this, you watch TV, movies, whatever, instead of the games. And so they also, though, had this plan. Basically, your Xbox One game would come with a code. and once you put that code into your Xbox, you can play the disc, but you couldn't give the game to your friend to borrow because they would need to have that code. But since you already put that code in your Xbox, only you could play it. So kind of like a digital game, but physically. It was basically there to stop reselling because Microsoft is a greedy corporation, of course. And of course, people booed them. Like, this is ridiculous. Like, who wants this? And PlayStation, and I think this is what woke Xbox up. The last major console war-y thing that we have seen where the companies directly, like, yell at each other or whatever, was when PlayStation made this iconic commercial where it basically showed the steps of sharing a PlayStation 4 game, which was just a guy handing another guy a PlayStation game. Yeah. The video for that will be in the description if you want to see it. It was great. And rightfully so, mocking them. So here we are in 2023. That was in 2013. A decade later, we're here a decade later, and they're doing the same thing. Well, they're not exactly doing the same thing, but basically now, in the terms of service, you need to have you have to register with Sony in order to sell your game. That means you cannot resell your game legally unless you have a Sony card or Sony's approval. That's right, you need Sony's approval to sell your used games, the games you bought. So basically you're buying it twice just to resell it and get maybe half of that. That was they updated the new terms of service, and why guys, why, who thought it was a good idea? And of course, I forgot the PlayStation Portal release, but that, again, I have a video on that. You can go check it out. And I think I have a theory on why they're doing stuff like this. They're doing this because they're getting sued by the CMA for about, I think, I'll have the price on screen, but I think it was like $6.8 billion or something. And you know, Sony isn't a multi-trillion-dollar company like Microsoft, so this is a big deal to them. This could mean the end of PlayStation as we know it, because that's a lot of money. They may sell PlayStation off, who knows. I don't think they will, but that's a lot of money. And I think why they are doing this, they're squeezing their fan base for every little cent they have, is so that they can pay to hire lawyers and try not to get sued by them. And if they do end up having to pay the fee, they're going to have to use all those cents to pay them back. So they're squeezing every little cent out of their fan base to do this. I am dumbfounded. I am in shock that they would do this. Okay? I bet this, oh boy, if the FTC wasn't trying to figure out how to get COD out of Microsoft's hands, I bet they'd be suing them right now. And yeah, it's ridiculous. That's, in my opinion, that's very anti-consumer, making people have to pay you so that they can sell games they rightfully bought. But then I was like, okay, so last night I was like, okay, I'm gonna put this poll up. I'll have a vote. I could just talk about the whole you can't sell games without Sony's permission thing, and then whatever. So I went to bed, got up, then on the Salt server I'm in, I see just I get bombarded with all this just information. Turns out that a Giga leak happened, and like there were some guys saying they hacked Insomniac and that they were gonna have hold them ransom if they didn't pay them or something like that. And I was like, well, this is a big deal. They said they would release the information in a week if they didn't get anything. Well, been a week. And all the stuff just came flying, just came at me. And, oh boy. there was a lot of juicy information that I could make a whole video going over, but I'm gonna summarize it. Now, you know, there was game information and a roadmap and all that, but the things I want to focus on is Sony was actually scared of Call of Duty. Yeah, you know that whole Bungie flex that I was talking about? Yeah, that was all just a bunch of copium. You know, they were actually scared now, because in 2027, I think the Call of Duty deal they signed with Microsoft is going to be expired. So now they are scared of what will happen afterwards. Oh yeah, by the way, Bungie. Speaking of Bungie, they're probably not going to be a studio anymore, because Sony is going to absorb them now, because Bungie did not meet the expectations. So, well, way to waste a bunch of money, guys. Good job. All that money he was bragging about, saying that Jim Ryan was bragging about. Yeah, so now Bungie's probably not even going to be a studio anymore. And it turns out they were scared of Call of Duty, so there you go. And they spent tons of money on the Marvel license, and it was just a whole thing. And Ratchet and Clank sold squat. It did not sell well from these leaks. And yeah, it's just... yeah, it's been a crazy year to be a PlayStation player. And I want to end it on this. There are some PlayStation fans who are taking the moral high road, and they're not talking about these leaks because they are greater than me. You're probably thinking that. You're probably thinking, oh, these guys, they're not talking about this out of respect. No, let me stop you there. They are not talking about this out of respect. They're doing it because they don't want to show PlayStation L's. You know, that's why. They're not doing it because they respect Bungie or anything. Okay, this happened to Microsoft earlier this year. And guess what? Ponies and just news outlets were all over it. But now all of a sudden, no, we want to be respectful. Where was this attitude when the Bethesda leak happened, okay? I mean, I don't want to, you know, I don't want to be that guy or anything, but like, it's a bit fishy now. Bit fishy, I think. But yeah, that's really all I want to talk about it. The moral of the story is that, you know, you can never be too popular to fail, because Sony was at their height in 2022. They had big plans for this year, and it all came crumbling down. Xbox sold well, Nintendo sold well, and PlayStation has been taking L's. But yeah, that's the end of this video. If you want me to do a whole video about PlayStation fanboys reacting to this news, and you want me to go further in detail, I will gladly do that. I will see you all later. Goodbye.